There we go. So, welcome. My name is Fetter. I manage the United Learning Program for the General Council Office, and I'm also a minister in a church in Toronto. And it is a delight and a pleasure to be able to connect with you throughout these Lenten weeks, and I just have a chance to explore this book together and reflect a little more deeply with each other and with the some of the authors of the different pieces in the book. I have had a lot of fun pulling this together, and I am just delighted to see that you're here and want to be a part of it too. Kind of hoping today that we'll have some time to go into small groups for a portion of our discussion. We've spent so much time in the first 2 weeks kind of getting the preliminaries out of the way. I wanted to make sure that we had enough time to really wrestle with content. So I'm going to try today to do a little fewer stage directions so that we can more quickly jump into our content and save some time for some small group discussion, because I know that's often a helpful way to reflect on these things. But having said that, if you've got sort of prosaic questions or tech questions or that kind of stuff, please put them in the chat and let me know what your questions are. I'm going to mute your mics and invite you to keep your mics muted for our plenary sessions, just so that we don't disturb each other with coughs and dogs barking and sirens going by and all of that kind of stuff. And as we transition from the kind of chit chat that we always do at the beginning of these meetings into the purpose of our gathering, let me invite you just to take a moment to pause and to reflect, as you always do, to be still and to ground yourself. Think about what brings you courage when life is falling apart around you. What is the source of hope and encouragement and of light for you? As you do that, I'm going to light my candle, and I'll invite you, if you have one, to light yours too. We'll allow those candles burning in so many homes across the country to be a reminder of the courage that we find, the light that inspires us, the creativity that draws the best out of us, and the reminder always that we are not alone. Thanks be to God. So we'll just take a moment to reflect and to be still. And so once again, I am sitting today in the town of Aurora in Ontario, Anishinaabe lands, traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other First Nations whose presence continues here to this day. I also acknowledge the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. And so as Bob was saying to us earlier, we are in important and informative ways, all treaty people. Well, I invite you to take a moment to think about the treaty that binds you and the ways in which you carry that responsibility. And let us gather in prayer. You invite us to be still, oh God, to step out of the frenzy of our lives and the need to be busy and to prove ourselves and just to sit and to listen and to reflect and to wonder. Come be with us. Open our ears to hear, open our eyes to see, open our hearts to understand. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And let me invite the readers to read this for us now. You'll need to open your mics, please.
Reading from Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble.
Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult.
There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city. It shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns.
The nations are in an uproar, the kingdoms totter. God speaks, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge.
Come, behold the works of the Lord. See what desolations God has brought on the earth. The Lord makes wars cease to the end of the earth. God breaks the bow and shatters the spear and burns the shields with fire.
Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge.
Thank you. Thank you for reading. So as I said at the beginning, this is a psalm that we classically use at funerals. I've opened many funerals over the years with God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. It's kind of burned into my brain. And of course, there's lots of reasons for that. But what speaks to you in this about God's response to the terrible times in our lives? Maybe funerals or maybe other terrible times. How does this respond to that? How do we see God doing that here? Let me just put some words in the chat and unpack this for a few minutes before we jump into good courage. Be still, says Nancy. I got you, God says. When morning dawns, says Sally, God continually creates a new day. Being still isn't always so easy, says Gail. Bob remembers Martin Luther's hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." God doesn't change, says Susan, even though all around is changing. Judith says, we're certainly in a time of nations uproar and kingdoms tottering, yet God is with us. God in the midst of the city, says Judy. So let's make a list of the metaphors of God's power in this reading. All the different things. I just kind of pull them out of the reading. How is God's power described here? Exalted, refuge. God's speech melts the earth. Works of God, powerful works, so power, says Rosemary. It shall not be moved. Mountains shake, waters roar and foam. Present, makes war cease, breaks the bow, shatters the spear. A present help. What really struck me in this is that there's some stuff that is destructive and some stuff that is kind of rebuilding, right? I mean, God's devastations or desolations. See what desolations God has brought. But those desolations are of bad things, right? Wars, bow, spear, shields. That's what's being desolated by this God. Strength, says Julie, stops fighting. So how do we connect all of this active stuff God is doing with the advice in the last verse, be still? I am with you in the midst of the changes, says John. God's doing the busy work for us, says Nancy, so we don't have to. Interesting. So just reading between the lines, Nancy, maybe sometimes what we need to do is get out of the way. It's becoming still, says Judith, that we make the connection. It's almost like a don't worry, I'm here speech, says Rosemary. Learning to practice a non-anxious presence in our daily living. I am so steeped in the Protestant work ethic, that's very hard to do. I need the constant reminder because I don't feel like I'm worth it if I'm not doing. Helpful contributions, friends. Thank you. We're going to read Nora Vedris's piece today called COVID Crash. I don't know whether you had a chance to read it ahead of time or not. Doesn't matter. It was there on the website if you wanted to look at it. But we're going to listen to Nora read it herself now. So sit back. It's about a 2-minute video, and we'll just listen to her read her piece.
I got COVID this week. Like, honestly, after 2.5 years, 3 vaccines, endless masks, dry and cracked hands from all the washing, missed birthdays and holidays and working from home, I finally caught it. Or maybe it caught me. Anyhow, I'd hoped that I would be one of those lucky ones who could flippantly say, I hardly even knew I had it. But on day 3, as I lay in bed, unable to do anything but binge watch This Is Us, I could no longer deny it. I was sick. I sent a text to my mother-in-law, who was rising up and taking over all the parenting needs of the week to lament. And she responded, I'm sorry you're not well, but I wanted you to lie down for 2 years. So, see you in a few days. I don't know why it's so hard to slow down. I don't know why we resist resting. I don't know why we insist on endlessly pushing ourselves to the limit and beyond it. But I see it all the time. I see people just barely managing to keep it together, existing at the very end of a rope that is frayed and worn. We are tired and weary, and yet we keep pushing as if to stop for a moment is a sign of weakness, an admission of failure. Perhaps we all come to a moment when we are at that crossroads, where we have to take a hard, honest look at what we've been doing, or more to the point, why we've been doing it, and decide which way we will go. Will we keep clinging to the end of that old frayed rope, or will we listen to those ancient words of wisdom and rest?
So what jumps out at you in that? What did you notice?
She had a wise mother-in-law.
Yes. Sign of weakness, says Karen. To stop for a moment. How true. Clinging to a frayed rope, says Kimberly. Just realized I need to put my phone on silent. You don't need to hear it when it rings.
We require some new training because we have this push that we've been taught and persuaded leads us to want and do more, and that expectation is very real in most of our lives. It is up to us to schedule things differently and train differently.
We put a lot on ourselves, don't we? Sally says we seem to believe we're invincible. Jane says it's not just what we're doing, but why. Well, Sandra's pushing back. I feel like we've been forced to rest for the past 3 years, and I'm keen to get active again. My sense of COVID, Sandra, is that people have either been way overworked or bored out of their tree. There hasn't been a happy medium. Rosemary says, so relatable, so hard to slow down, takes illness to do it. Corrupted by the Protestant work ethic, maybe, says Nancy. Why do you think we're resisting? Why do we want to keep so busy? What's that about for us, do you think? Jane says we feel more in control when we're active. I need to be needed, says Susan. If we're not being needed, who are we? And Jillian says, trying to prove our worth. Maybe people will think we're lazy, says Rosemary. Nobody has ever accused me of being lazy. Ego, says Nancy. Trying to deflect the burden of expectation. Much to do and so little time. Bob says, as pastors, we want to be loved and needed, even retired pastors. That's a little crazy, isn't it, Bob? I mean, we love people who aren't frantic. So why would we think that we have to be frantic in order to be lovable?
As a retired pastor, Bob, I want to meet you.
So if pausing to stop for a moment isn't a sign of weakness, if we need to rethink it, what else could it be? Let me leave that question set, and we'll move on to hear the first part of my conversation with Nora about this. So, as with the others, I've had the chance to sit down and chat with her, and I wanted to share some of our conversation together. Here we go. I can remember somebody pointing out that so often when we say to somebody, "How are you?" they don't say fine anymore. They say busy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, I'm a staunch Protestant, right? Like my Protestant work ethic is deeply ingrained, and I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. Like I think it's good to be driven. I think it's good to be hardworking, and I think, being a productive, effective member of society, these are good things. And so I try not to beat myself up too much for being that kind of person. But there comes a point where we just get so overwhelmed and so tired, and there's just too much going on. But what I'm noticing lately is that everyone is at the end of their rope. Like from the busiest person I know to the person who is at home every day, even the retired people I know who are supposed to be taking this break, they're all at that same kind of weary, worn feeling right now. And so I don't know if it's just a result of the pandemic that we're all just done, or we've just been for so long pushing that fallacy that we have to be busy, and we have, in order to be valuable, to be worthy of praise or whatever we are kind of longing for, that we have to be busy.
Yeah, I mean, that really hits me too. And you talked about words like weakness and admission of failure, and that somehow not being busy means that we're not succeeding. Mm-hmm. What are we supposed to be succeeding at? What are we failing at?
Yeah, well, and I guess that's the ultimate question, right? Is what do we think we achieve by being busy? And I wonder if it really comes down to this current trend of hits and views and likes. Like the only way to get a lot of that is to produce a lot of content, is what my kids tell me, right? You have to produce content in order for people to like you. And whether or not we have somehow warped that kind of need for content and like that clickbait, but not even just in a digital manner. Like we've now done that in our actual lives, right? So I have to have my calendar full. So I have all of these clicks, all these things that I have to be present at, visible at, in order to have value, to prove to other people or to myself or to God or whoever we think we need to prove that to, that I'm a commodity, that I'm needed, that I'm wanted, that I'm an influencer, whatever. And I don't even know that we do it consciously. I think a lot of the time it's completely something we've just bought into without even realizing that we've done that. And then the pandemic has just made that worse because everything went online. So not only are we counting bodies in pews, right, which I've often joked that the number of people in church on a Sunday morning is directly tied to my mental health, right? not healthy, not a good way to do ministry. But now on top of that, we also have to count our YouTube views every week. Like, how many people did we reach online? Like, who cares? Did we reach 20 people, 100 people, 5 people? Does it matter? No, of course not. But that's how our society works now. It's about clicks, it's about likes, it's about views, online and now offline as well.
So how do we measure success differently as Christians? If it's not measured by bums and pews or the number of likes, what's the yardstick?
That's a good question. I just started a sabbatical. I'm on day 4. It's the first sabbatical I've taken in my 20 years of ministry. And it turns out so far I'm really bad at sabbaticals. I'm very twitchy, and I find myself pacing around my house and then, wanting to do something and trying to hold back. And, you still get some calls and people still kind of reach out, and it's hard. It's hard to say, I can't help you and no, and all these things. And I kind of flippantly said to my friend the other day, I'm like, well, Jesus wouldn't have said no, though. He would have gone, he would have done the funeral, he would have healed. And she was like, yeah, and thankfully you're not Jesus. So this idea that within the church, as ministry personnel, that we always have to be available. Like I was taught that 80% of ministry is showing up. You need to be in the room. And I really, looking back on my career, I've really taken that to heart. But there comes a point where we need to rest too. And so we get to that crossroads, right? And we have to say, okay, is this a moment for me to rest, or is this a moment for me to say yes? And I don't know that I have the answer to that just yet. And then as Christian people on a whole, we have to do that as well, right? There's moments when the church has to stand up and say, yeah, you know what? We're tired and we're sick of this, but this is important. We have to do this. We have to stand up in this moment and voice what we feel God's calling us to say or do or be in this society right now. And the pandemic really forced that, right? Like all of us had to transform 2,000 years of liturgical history to a digital format in a matter of hours. right? Like, it was insane that we did. And it wasn't just the United Church. It was like across the board, we all did that. And it was oddly exciting, energizing. I was able to tap in, and I found my colleagues, we tapped into this energy and creativity that we'd maybe been missing because we got to do something new for the first time ever. And then it started getting tiring. And now we're having to do both. And that's exhausting. Mm-hmm. So now we're standing at the crossroads and needing to say, okay, you know what? Like, we now need to take a step back, take stock of what were we doing wrong before the pandemic? Like, we look now and we were for sure missing things in our ministry that we do better now than we did before the pandemic. Absolutely. But we can't do everything. So at what point do we stop and say, okay, we need to listen to some words of wisdom here and take a deep breath and remember that it is okay to rest, that the church's purpose or value isn't just seeped in being busy. It's got to be more than that.
Learn something. I did indeed, and I'll give you a chance to hear about what I learned next. But there's a lot in there to unpack. So before we go on and talk about what I learned, what jumped out at you in that? Where did you identify, or where do you want to push back?
Was it in one of the other readings in this book that we read the comment that Jesus doesn't call us to be successful? We're called to be faithful. That's one thing that I was reminded of by what she has.
Yeah. And those are two different things. Thank you.
I was struck by her comments about how we need to, it's okay to be still. And I cannot resonate with COVID because I had an operation in Hamilton the day before COVID struck.
Oh
So
my.
I was in the hospital for 3 months, not because of COVID. And I was sent to 3 different hospitals. Like, it was just a zoo. So now I have to rest. That's my life every day. It's all about resting. And I remember feeling very much at the time, and I'm sorry if this comes across offensive, but I remember feeling that I wish this pandemic would never end, because now everybody knows what it's like to be a shut-in.
Yeah, it gives us a taste of the life that a lot of our parishioners have been living a lot more permanently than most of us do, doesn't it?
And
Thank you.
also, I was like that myself when I was actively working. I did not have time to rest.
Yeah.
So this is really quite an abrupt change in my way of living.
Well, and I'm very aware that when I host a Lenten study in the middle of a weekday, that the people who are coming tend to be retired and not people at work, right? So probably for many of you on the line today, your experience would be different than Nora's. Nora's significantly younger than I am and is just in the frenzy of trying to do a full-time job and manage kids, and everything's not what she expected, and it's exhausting. But I think there are probably others on the line too who have dealt with rest, maybe even enforced rest, in very different ways. That's helpful. Nancy says it's a kind of functional atheism. Sometimes clergy are the worst. We think that if it's going to get done, we have to do it because God isn't going to. And Judy adds, something about our culture of consumerism fuels our busyness. The capitalist paradigm, growth economy, need for always more. She used the word commodity. And yeah, you know, we are hit by over 5,000 advertising impressions a day, and every one of them tells us there's something wrong. There's something wrong that'll just be fixed if we buy this thing, whatever they're selling. Life isn't good enough. Life is bad. Life can be improved. Life can be repaired. Just buy this cream, buy this diet, buy this program, buy this commodity. Salvation by buying.
I was remembering 2 wise remarks my husband made over the years. He was a minister, I was not. But one of the things he remarked as he watched me work hard as a housewife and mother, he said, "Your job is never done." And then he said, "My job is never done either, but when I'm done, I come home." And then another time when we were working in Brazil, and the bishop was exhorting all the clergy to work harder and spend more time with their congregations and always be available and so on. And he put up his hand and said, "No, Bishop, I won't do that." And the bishop was rather surprised. And he said, "I'm available to my Christ 24/7, but not to my congregation." And I thought that was pretty wise too.
So Bob was struck by the notion that maybe we are doing some things better since COVID. I was too, and I didn't pursue it with her. But what would you add to that list, folks online? There's 35 of us here. What do you think we have learned from COVID that we're now doing better? I am making a lot more phone calls for pastoral care, and I'm in better touch with my congregation members now than I ever was before the pandemic. I have learned what a powerful tool that is for ministry, and I never used it this way before the pandemic.
I think one of the best things we have learned as a church is that connections like this from people all over the place, because we have technology, are a valuable way to do ministry. And frankly, for me, it's a God-given gift, you know.
Yeah. And Sally's saying the same thing here. Thank you. Thank you for that. Sally's saying Zoom brought us face to face, which was really interesting. People actually talk together instead of in coffee clusters. We're seeing this inside of each other's homes, right? Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And this is Bob. I think too, through Zoom meetings, we have learned to connect. I was part of a meeting yesterday and the woman didn't want to be part of any Zoom meetings. She didn't figure it was as near as good. But I figured we wouldn't connect here otherwise if we weren't on Zoom.
It is a privilege to sit in my chair and to have a chance to connect with people across this country in ways I never would have a chance to do otherwise. I'm going to move us along. How exclusive that gift is, says Kimberly, for those who are not able to access internet. That's true. Every tool has a difficult side as well, doesn't it? Let me share with you the last couple of minutes of my conversation with Nora, and then at the end of that, instead of unpacking this in plenary here, I'm going to put you into small groups for about 7 minutes, I think, probably no more than that. When you go into the small group, I'd invite you just kind of, again, pick up what you noticed in this and where does it take you. And we'll have a chance at the end to sort of share with each other on the chat in just a few minutes where this goes with you. But I will put you through the magic of Zoom into small groups and just let you find your feet there. Somebody's going to have to take the bull by the horns and start talking. And up in the top right corner, there'll be a little countdown clock that tells you how many minutes you have left. So make sure everybody in your group has a chance to say what they want to say. Let's listen to the end of this, and then I'll just, without further announcement, put you into those groups. I learned something a couple of years ago about Sabbath that I didn't know before. I was doing some Jewish Christian dialogue stuff, and as a part of that, they invited us to come to synagogue for the Sabbath service. And I was really struck that every reading and every psalm and every reference to scripture was about creation. And it finally hit me between the eyes that for the Jewish people, Sabbath is not about rest. That's how we Christians use it. Sabbath is about celebrating ourselves as creatures, celebrating God as creator, celebrating this remarkable gift that we've been given of the world and our stewardship in it. And that's why they light the candles, and those are the prayers they pray. And every week they step back to say, you are the creator, I am the creation, let me get the roles right. And that's changed my sense of Sabbath altogether.
Yeah, I love that idea that, this idea that it's a pause to see, where am I in the universe? What's my role here, and what's my connection to the creation around me? I think that's a beautiful way to look at it. And years ago, we were given a day off, right? We had Sunday, everything was closed. You couldn't, when I first started here, you couldn't get gas on a Sunday because the gas station was closed. So there were a number of times where I'd be calling up like the farmer next door going, do you have any gas? Because I had a 3-point charge and I didn't fill up the night before, and then I was hooped. So, you were forced into that moment of stepping back, and there wasn't a 24-hour news feed, and there wasn't constant inundation of information and data. And that was like 15 years ago. And so if we were able to go back to that sense of Sabbath, right, that wisdom from ancient days, that it's not just about rest, it's not just about unplugging, which I think is really important, but it is about grounding ourselves where we are in the universe right now. And I love that idea.
So we'll go into small groups and see you back here in 7 minutes. And for those of you who are watching the recording before I have a chance to edit this out, please know that I've set the timer for 7 minutes and you can just use the scroll bar and move right along.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Susan. Folks are in folks are in small groups. I don't know whether you were disconnected and just came in now.
No, I've been kind of going back and back and forth.
Okay.
Because I'm on my cell phone, and I am not usually. I have a laptop that I am very, and so this phone thing is driving me nuts. So,
I'm sorry.
when you first sent us to the Zoom rooms or to the meeting rooms, that's what it told me it was doing, and then
Okay.
it just sent me right back to you. So
isn't
I
that
got
weird?
out of there, and I can see in my chat the other two
Okay.
people that are in my Zoom room, in the room,
Okay.
but I can't seem to get there.
Isn't that weird?
So I tried again, just hitting the meeting rooms. There's like the 4 little squares below
Right.
where on my phone it says live.
Yes.
I tried hitting that, and it just circled me around, and I came right back to you. So I did send a note to the 2 folks in the room that I'm having technical difficulties.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
But
you know
now-
what? We've got 1 minute left. So why don't
Yeah,
you just sit
exactly.
tight at this point?
Yep.
Ponder for yourself rather than
Ponder
getting
for
frustrated with the technology, and we'll get
Oh,
your
I'm
thoughts on the chat.
battling
Technology is powerful but not perfect.
Oh, exactly. And the other thing is I'm in Quebec, and everything in Quebec is different.
Oh. Well, I like Walter Wink. I say technology is one of the powers and principalities. It's created good, but it's fallen and in need of redemption.
Exactly. That's very true too. Okay, I'm going to mute myself again. So when
Sure,
folks start
go ahead.
coming in, okay? Thanks.
No problem. And we have 20 seconds left till they start coming back in. So.
Okay.
Oh, welcome back, folks. So if you were going to name a key learning or surprise from your 7-minute conversation, let's just put that in the chat for a couple of minutes. We don't have too much time left, and a lot of what went there is just for you and your group. But anything here that you want to share with everybody else? Some key learning, a key aha moment from that conversation. Marie says Sabbath rest can be about connecting with nature or people, not just stopping our busyness.
And time
Rosemary
is a
found
gift.
Sorry, say again, Patricia.
Time is a gift. COVID forced us to slow down and stop. And for my husband and I, we found time that we never had before because we just retired before COVID. But
Thank
also it proved the resilience of all with the way we pivoted to online connecting and finding how we stay connected to those that are important and those who are there to engage with, to challenge our learning and our beliefs.
Thank you. Rosemary was appreciating the emphasis on creation in Judaism.
One of our participants mentioned the fact that disabled and people who were living with physical restraints had hoped at the beginning of COVID that other people would learn from them how they deal with their limitations in their time, but it never really happened.
Interesting. Yes, some of us learn and some of us never do, right? Last 30 seconds. Anything else you want to add from that before we move into our closing prayers? Julie says, we talked about the distraction of social media, perhaps taking us away from being still. Remembering the convoy too, okay? The Easter Eve service got lessons. The Easter Eve service lessons begin with creation. You're right. Thanks, John. Yeah, the long litany, the service of 7 lessons, it always starts with creation. Sally says, I can talk a good rest, but not too sure if I'm actually good at resting. I think for me, it's not even so much about resting as it is about saying, I need to let God be God. I don't have to fix it. I just have to do my best. And then it's over to God, whether God is going to use me or some other tool. No, thank you, friends. Thank you for your contributions and for all that you've added today. I'd like to go into prayer for the close of our session. And again, as we did last week, I'm going to invite us to build the prayers out of your petitions that you write to the chat. So as we did last week, we'll begin with the things we're grateful for and then transition into the things that we're concerned about. So Thanksgivings and then intercessions. And I'll close with a prayer that Nora wrote for day 19 in good courage. Let's pray. Into the busyness of our lives, O God, you invite us to be still. Into the questions of whether we're worth it and whether we're achieving, you invite us to reflect on creation. Into our desire to be caregivers, you invite us to be taken care of. And so as we try to disconnect from all of the unhealthy ways that we keep ourselves busy, and take a moment to reflect on the things that make life valuable, vibrant, delightful, comforting, challenging. Hear us as we name the things we're grateful for today. Inquiring minds, a chance to slow down and think and pray together. Grateful for this time of fellowship together. Grateful for connections with the soul of others and of God. Grateful for the birds returning, even while the snow is still with us. Grateful for family and nature and time outside in changing weather. Grateful for this time together, says Liz. For all these blessings and so many more, we bring thanks. And so we turn our thoughts to the things that trouble us, to to the franticness that consumes us, to the people who are dragged down by a sense of falling short, not being good enough, not being liked. Hear us as we name our concerns today. We're grateful, says Sally, for flowers beginning to bloom in the desert, snowdrops, crocuses, daffodils. I remember those for whom COVID has not been merely inconvenient, but devastating. Remember those who live with anxiety, misunderstandings among church people that lead to hurt feelings. Pray for an end to old, unhealthy patterns, especially people who threaten to quit when they encounter difficulties. Pray for caregivers, both family and professional, who have a hard time taking time off. Remember the emergency in Malawi due to food and cholera, due to flood and cholera. Remember those who are isolated from community, whether face-to-face or online. I weep to see creation destroyed by war. You call us, God, to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. And yet our culture calls us to run faster and faster. The world we live in distracts us from the Sabbath, drives us toward production. May you help us grow into effective, hardworking people who know when it's time to stop. Help us turn our hearts to your ancient call of rest. Fill us with a desire. Empower us to claim the right to slow down now and then, so that instead of crashing, we might walk gently into a time of sacred Sabbath. Amen.
Don't be afraid, my love is stronger, my love is stronger than your fear. Don't be afraid, my love is stronger, and I have promised to be always near.
Thanks for joining us, friends. Good to be with you. I look forward to seeing you again next